News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Allan Gilbreth, darkoakmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian, being forced by Joe to wish you all a happy belated International Beaver Day.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorite animals in the animal kingdom. Although, in fairness, Allan, you're the one that alerted me to that. Somehow we missed that last week.
No. It was this past week. It was,
okay.
So it was just, I think it was Monday or Tuesday.
The noble beaver.
And there's a story behind why it's this day.
Okay.
Or was that day.
All right. Well, we're always happy to support those guys. They get the job done, and they help our ecosystem. Although some farmers would disagree, I guess. Right?
I said they get the job done whether you want them to or not.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, okay. That sounds good, Max. So,
and it's also, today is actually Teak Awareness Day.
Now, have you worked with teak, Allan?
Yes, okay. I have many times.
I've worked refinishing teak, but I can't say I've ever built anything with teak. But it's a cool wood. But that's the outdoor wood. That's what we right.
It is the non-rotting.
Right. Exactly.
It holds up really well.
Yeah,
it is brittle though.
And you have to keep it oiled, and especially if it's going to be out in the sun and the rain and everything like that.
Yep.
So, teak. I don't get why we have to be aware of it, Max. Why can't we just celebrate it?
It's aware of the properties that it possesses.
Oh, maybe it's like be aware that you gotta take care of this wood. You can't just stick it out there and.
Well, it's all like I said. It's also because be aware of the fact that this wood is really versatile.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'm going to be aware all day. I'm going to be looking out and thinking about teak. So, but also, if you do own any teak furniture, put some oil on it. I don't know, boiled linseed oil or something.
Show a little extra love to your teak today.
And if you do put that boiled linseed oil on using a rag, please be aware that rag can start on fire by itself.
Oh, yes.
They can spontaneously combust. I always soak it in like water and then throw it out before it, just to be safe.
Before it takes out the trash can.
Yeah, and I've seen it where they will start smoking and they can almost start up. So, all right, well, hey, I guess in keeping with International Beaver Day, what do you think of this, Allan? For great moments in building history, we're going to stay on brand and we're going to celebrate one of the world's oldest still functioning dams it's debated. This thing's either like 3,300 years old or at least, 1,700 years old. It's pretty old and it's still working. So
regardless, you know what I think?
What?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mac. He was just dying to push that button.
Well,
I wonder how long he planned that out.
He's had that prepped for a while.
Yeah, but it's going back. It's called Lake Holmes, and then there's another name for it that the Egyptians gave it that I can't pronounce.
And it is the Quatina.
So, all right. Well, hey, in Allan's Week in Review, boy, I'll tell you, you're a braver man than me. I saw pictures. I saw the photo evidence of what you were working on, and this did not look like something I'd want to do, man.
It's interesting and a challenge. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Let's see. We've got quite a bit here. So, what do you think of this? So check this out. I was at my, and we're going to put this out to the listeners. This is going to be on the table all day. So I was at my customer's house, and because I'm working in that laundry room that I built for him, and now they're using it, and so he threw a couple of pieces of clothes in the laundry in the dryer, and I hear this do-do, 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 and it turns out they, as a practice, as a family, put tennis balls in their dryer. You ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
He said it makes the clothes fluffier. It does something to help the drying process or whatever. And that's something they do. I was wondering why there's a basket of tennis balls in their laundry room. And so it got me thinking about unconventional home hacks. So if you're out there and you do weird things like that too, if you've got something that's maybe out of the ordinary, I've heard of putting eggshells under your tomato plants and things like that.
So do that too.
So that's on the table today, and maybe we'll chime in with a couple of unconventional home hacks. But if you've got anything odd that you do in the area of of home life, let us know. You can get in touch with us. I don't know that we're offering any prizes, but we'd like to hear from you. So
we're going to call it the home hack idea exchange.
Yeah. Okay.
Share your favorite thing with us. We'll share a few with you.
And one more thing, I guess. I hope we get to this from the mind of Max. It was basically building with more natural materials.
It's a follow-up query based on something Allan said last
Okay.
week.
Yeah. Get it. Maybe things, I don't know, they're a little more eco-friendly, things like that. So, all right. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. And we also invite you to go to at Tool Talk Radio over on Facebook and check out the posts we've made. So, but before we get to any of those things, let's get to our must-have item of the week, which I think this one cost me about $3, Alan. So tell people. No, actually, this is the jumbo pack, so it was $5.
It's the value size.
$5 back. All right. What you are holding is a furniture or cabinet bumper.
Yeah, these things are cool. So there's 120 of them. You've seen them, folks, I'm sure. Everybody's probably got one in their cabinet. When you close the cabinet door, or I should say when you open it, on the top or the bottom or somewhere, you're going to see a little piece of felt, or you're going to see a little silicone transparent bumper. And that's just to keep it from slamming when you shut it.
It's not like the sugar packets you put under your table, right?
I wouldn't do that. That's how you get ants, right? But these would serve the same purpose, Max. I mean, these things are very versatile.
Well, this is also for like non-skid.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got, Max, you've got a small table. You're kind of an efficiency guy. You have a small table, but it has wood on the bottom.
Yeah.
You'd put the little, now I've always referred to them as rubber baby buggy bumpers. So you put the little bumper on the bottom, and now it is basically a non-skid, and it also keeps it from marring the floor if it sits there for a very long period of time.
Isn't that kind of interesting how we can literally combat friction with just the tiniest bit of rubber plug?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive, but I have to ask, what are some of the most unconventional uses of those that you guys have done, that you guys have used in the past that isn't for furniture?
Oh.
I'm looking at Allan because I'm assuming.
I just okay, go ahead, Alan, because I just use these things. The reason I like these, Max, is because for one thing, you can get them in different thicknesses. Like this is the half-inch diameter, which I don't know, it gives you about an 1/8-inch thickness. But you can also get some that are thinner or thicker, but they're transparent, so that's the key, and they stick really well. So
Let's see, for a client that had a tendency to drop things into a drawer, we actually put a pattern of them in the bottom of the drawer so that when they, let go of something, it landed softly without a big bam.
Yeah.
Because that was like waking up everybody else in the house. Of another highly unusual thing we have done with those is we've used them as a gap spacer with something that moved. So picture, if you will, an older home. The floor has a little flex and give to it, but they also had what they used to call the waiter, which is a thin table that sat next to the wall that you put the dishes on.
Oh.
And you don't really see
called?
these anymore,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that little thin table was called the waiter, and it had a tendency to rock and bump the wall just a little bit as people would walk through and walk around it. So we just lined the back side of it with the bumpers, and everybody was magically happy.
Yeah. You know what else these are good for, Max, is that if you want to use them as like a shim, but sometimes you have to shim something where you need just that little bit of cushion and flexibility built into the design. So, well, the reason I brought these in is because it's funny. It's funny how sometimes you overcomplicate things in your mind. So this laundry room that I'm finally almost finished with, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got other projects lined up, but there's about 4 cabinet doors where they're right up against a wall, and they don't want the kids to be opening the door and it bangs into the wall every time they do. So I was coming up with all these different ideas for incorporating springs and all these other things into the hinges, and I spent a good 2 hours fooling with this, and then I was looking at these and I said, now wait a minute. And then I found a way that if you found the perfect location behind the door and maybe you double these up or something, you stick it and it formed a bumper where you open the cabinet door, and then as it's getting close to the wall, it just sort of slowly, gently doesn't open all the way. It just kind of cushions it, but it also has enough give where it didn't. And I'm like, okay, that was the $3 solution versus the, whatever. So it's like, at the end of the day, the simple solution is always the best.
Always works out the best.
Yeah, but these things are great, and like we say, simple is oftentimes better. So, but anyway, so I would say get a few of these and just keep them in your junk drawer because you don't know what you're gonna do. The other thing I'm looking at these would probably work nice as a little accent for some kids' art projects or something. Maybe there's something at school that they're doing and they just got to set off that little piece of art or that little science fair experiment or something.
With a little tiny bit of what they call of textured paint.
Yeah.
They make great fake rivets.
Yeah. Oh, these things look just like rivets. Yeah, exactly.
Look like fake rivet tops. So like if you're making a prop piece of furniture.
Or if you're a cosplayer and you're dressing like a stormtrooper or something. So, all right. Well, there we go. That's our must-have item of the week. So, all right. Well, I'm looking at our list here. Let's see. When we get back, let's find out what Allan did this week.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
My clamps!
News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, actually, Allan, I said we were going to get to your week in review, but I forgot we have a little bit of a backlog of texts, so I feel like they should go to the front of the line.
Absolutely.
So what do we got here, Max? Some of these are from last week, too, because some people texted in literally with like a minute to go on the show. So
the thing is what really sparked people's interest was our discussion about wood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we need to have a whole other hour of just wood talk radio. People like talking about wood.
They do.
Okay.
Well, we have a buddy of ours named Norman Rockwell.
Right.
He says that Memphis has more trees per capita than any other place in the country.
Now, Norman Rockwell, that sounds cool, but what evidence what documentation do you have to prove that?
Actually,
that
is actually comes from the Shelby County Tourism Bureau.
Real? Okay, so
that is a documented fact. We got some trees.
I'll tell you this, because I moved here. I grew up in Chicago, but I lived in San Diego for a long time. And when I came here, that's the first thing I thought. I said, wow, is this place green?
Yeah, we got greenery.
Yeah.
We got greenery.
All right.
Goodness.
Well, that's something to be proud of. We got plenty of oxygen here.
We do.
Okay.
Now, then we had our buddy Robbie. Boy, did he have no fun last week with his flower beds being taller than his foundation.
Oh,
you remember that?
Yeah.
With all the rain. Yeah. Now, wait, who did Robbie clarify who planted those flower beds and who's in the doghouse on this one? Or
he didn't, but what I was going to say was he had a different comment or whatever with regards to more wood stuff. These are more fighting words. He says there's no doubt hardwood is the most superior floor product.
Well, that's not fighting words.
It's just an opinion.
Although, what is the one some people liked that back in the day? Was it called Knotty Pine? Was that a flooring one? Because sometimes in these really old homes, you'll see these 6-inch wide. They look to me like pine. I don't know.
You did have a Knotty Pine, and you all right. Basically, here's what kind of goes. The pattern on any wood you would put on the wall, you want nice, smooth, even grain.
Right.
But the floor, which is a supported surface, you actually want as much character as possible. So
it hides mistakes too, and it hides scratches.
It does. It does. So, there's just a different take as to what goes on the wall, what goes in the rafters, and what do you actually want to use for the floor.
Well, good old oak seems to be getting the job done for flooring, right? I mean, it has for centuries,
and it's we talked about teak. If you look at Asian homes, you'll see a lot of that. You'll see down in South America, there's a variety of woods they call axe woods or iron woods.
Right.
So everybody has a different take. America being slightly a subset of Great Britain, just how we were settled, oak is still kind of a favored a big favored wood
now,
for us.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think of hardwoods, see, Robbie, you just triggered us. Like you got us going. But when I'm thinking of hardwoods, I imagine that there's less expansion and contraction the harder a wood gets, right?
It doesn't denser the wood gets.
Okay, well, that's what I mean. But when I think of density, I think I've still, because like I have bloodwood on a table, and that thing is like, it feels literally like, I mean, a piece of metal.
Yes.
It's so dense. But so what I'm saying is I feel like that would give it an advantage as a flooring thing because it's not going to swell up and then contract and give you these big gaps.
Well, a good old-fashioned oak is going to be much, much, much denser than any modern-grown pine.
Right, yeah.
So,
okay, very good, Robbie. All right,
this
what else
actually brings me to a question that Brew Blaster brought up that I actually know the answer to. Okay. First, he said last week that he learned years ago that Memphis was an oak forest. Which kind of building on Robbie's point.
Okay.
No, not Robbie's point.
Norman Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell's point. Yeah, exactly. So, but he was asking, I was curious about what type of wood the USS Constitution, a.k.a. Old Ironsides, was made out of. And I knew the answer to that.
I'm glad you did because I sure don't.
White oak.
You are correct.
And interior is white oak and exterior is live oak. But either way, it's still, or it's for the vertical framing for live oak.
Isn't that something? Thinking about a big ship made of wood. I mean, that's how they were built in the day, but wow, holy smokes. So, okay.
You needed that old growth density to hold it together.
What were Viking ships made out of? Because those are also equally hardy.
You're going to get into actually quite a bit of different woods, but you are looking at your hardwoods again.
Okay. All right. And you know, Iceland is interesting too, as long as you just mentioned that real quick, because I never thought about this, but a lot of people that visit Iceland, because, you know, we are Icelandic, so one day I hope to go there. They said it looks like you're on another planet in some places. And I think part of that is because there's very few trees in Iceland. It's like you have all these landscapes with no trees on them or anything. So trees were at a premium, so they must have really, I don't know. I don't know what kind of trees are they track down in Iceland to build their ships, but anyway.
You brought oak over.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says. But I like this is just sort of a brief aside, but I like the method that they use for assembling their ships. They called it the clinker construction.
Yes,
clinker.
That's overlapping.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like a roof. You have overlapping scales.
There you go. All right, what else you got, Max?
That was it.
That's all our texts? Okay. All right, well, those are pretty good, actually. Those are pretty much on brand, and you can chime in all day, folks, and especially, like I said, if you have any unconventional home hacks that can top the tennis balls in the dryer technique.
Oh, I got a few for you.
Okay, well, we want to hear all about those. But
or if you have any good teak furniture, please do send us that on the text line.
Well, yeah, because today is Teak Awareness Day. Or you've got any good stories about beavers that you've experienced or something. I happen to know there's a guy in Hernando that I won't name because he's a customer of mine that he has no use for beavers out there, and sometimes he takes extreme measures on. He's got like 6 acres of property, and I'm like, oh man, okay, but anyway. We won't get too far into that. But before we get into any of these other things, let's shift gears.
Oh, the humanity.
This week, I think that's appropriate, Max, because Allan, we're going to find out what Allan did this week, and I'm glad it wasn't me, man. Well, you sent me pictures, and it did not look fun.
I sent you a picture, and let's just say, all right, have I ever done any tiling in my life?
Right.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah.
I have tiled so many hospital rooms, bathrooms, and oh, my goodness.
Wait, have you ever tiled a ceiling? Sometimes in a shower area, people tile the ceiling. I've never tried that.
It's kind of the lick it and stick it method. You just kind of get the butter just right and get them up there, and they'll stay. You can't use big ones.
I was gonna say
you're not using big tiles.
What if you think they're staying and then they sort of loosen up?
I've never had one drop.
Okay,
but you really got to have. Now I've never done that without concrete board.
Yeah, you got to make sure
because I would never do that with sheetrock because that eventually will fail.
That could give. Okay,
yeah, that'll give.
All right.
But yes, I have actually tiled a ceiling before. I have never, however, used 4 foot by 2 foot tiles before.
I thought you were kidding when you said that.
No.
I thought, okay, maybe these are big. Maybe they're like 1 foot by 2 feet or something. But I've seen these they're not. Is it fair to even call these a piece of tile? I mean, these.
It is a tabletop. Oh my gosh, these things are big. And
you're putting these sideways. You're putting these on walls.
Looking at my girth versus Max's, they weigh about as much as you do, Max. These things are
if
not
you drop
light.
them, I don't know what that's gonna.
No. And heavens to Betsy, I've got a good tile saw. I mean, I've got a big tile saw. It's not 4 foot by 2 foot big. So,
man,
this bathroom, I'm excited. I'm really excited because I want to see the finished product because it's going to be amazing. It's just massive, massive tiles. But, I mean, you go through a lot. Let's just say you're going to go through a lot of adhesive.
Well,
it's not like you're putting up a small tile, even a 12 by 12 or, the larger tiles. You're used to working with bigger tiles. There's just a whole different world when you cross that 2 foot boundary.
The first thing I thought about was because, and I'm not a tile expert. I've done enough that I know I don't really like doing it, to be honest. But so I put in these subway tiles. They were 4 inches by 16 inches.
Right.
And if the surface you're putting those on isn't perfectly flat, you risk that somebody's going to step on it and they're going to split. So you have to shim it up or you have to redo the floor. And or you find yourself resurfacing things or shimming, and it's every one you put up is a pain.
And they're a hassle.
One. I can't imagine what that's like when you expand that out to 4 feet by 2 feet.
Well, I will expound the wonderful world of levelers in just a moment.
Here we go. All right, well, stay tuned for the drama when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I'm describing a person, not something complicated like a wooden sailing ship or proper dovetail technique.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Oh, I see what you did there, Max.
To be fair, I don't think humans are constructed with the clinker construction method.
I hope not.
Like ships.
I've known a few people, though, Max. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And we got to do this in order, you guys. We've got a few things to get to. Allan is in the middle of regaling us with what I consider a horrific story of tile installation, working with 2 foot by 4 foot tiles. I can't even imagine. No, thank you. He was dealing with that. I want to get to some other things, but Max, you said we have a texter that chimed in, and we always get to them first, right?
Well, it was just more along the lines of I saw these photos on the text line, and I thank you, Randy, because a while back we asked if you could send in pictures of people being triggered by the wood discussion, because he was talking about how you don't make guitars these days out of Brazilian wood anymore, but he showed 2 days ago he sent pictures of him in his beautiful guitar from back in the day.
Yeah, Randy,
1968.
68. Okay, so Randy, we'll
1,400 gigs with it.
Okay, we'll try to post that picture because what's nice is he showed him playing the guitar. He showed the guitar by itself by the front, and then he showed the back, which the back has some really nice wood grain on there. And it's interesting. I suppose there's acoustic. I mean, there's probably reasons you use that type of wood, Allan, right, to get the right resonance and the right sound quality out of that instrument.
Sometimes it was just the beauty and the aesthetic of it. Yeah.
But thanks, Randy. That's the stuff we like, man. You send us a text that's understandable and with pictures. We sure like that. So, all right, in a minute, we're going to get back to Allan's conversation about what he did with this tile installation. Before we do that, though, we want to talk about something highly relevant, and I guess Robbie's starting to think about this with his foundation issues, and that is the foundation of your home. A healthy foundation is hugely important. Well, you don't have a healthy home without a healthy foundation. And Groundworks is all about helping you with your basement, your crawl space, and your slab. Some of us live on a slab. And pay attention to, you have to pay attention to your foundation. And especially, man, I'm just thinking of people that live on really uneven surfaces. There's places there's some homes around here in East Memphis, Allan, that I see that are, one half is, it's on a hill or it's or there's a big slope or something like that, and those I think are especially susceptible to foundation issues. But the thing with foundation issues is they don't always manifest themselves. It's not like you have water rushing into your home or something like that, but you might have a weird squeak in a floor, or you might have an odd crack above doors, or those stair step cracks in your brickwork outside, or an odd smell, or ants that congregate around a certain area. All of those can be an indication of problems with your foundation, and there's nobody better than the folks at Groundworks to help you through that process. Well, for one thing, you can't beat they're a national company with all the expertise you need to solve your foundation issues, and the consultation is free. So it's one of those things, you do not play games with your foundation. And the good news is too, sometimes that foundation issue is not as serious as you think. But in addition to that, also, if you sometimes we do have folks that have basements and crawl spaces here in the Mid-South, and sometimes there's waterproofing solutions that you're in need of, and they can help you with that as well. So get in touch with the folks at Groundworks. You can reach them at groundworks.com and schedule your free inspection today. So, all right. So, Allan, we're in the middle of you regaling us. If you're just tuning in, Allan is building a brand new bathroom for a client, and they're putting in tiles. And you weren't exaggerating. I saw the pictures. These are literally 4 foot by 2 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Have you weighed one of these? I have to believe they got to be up there at like 100 pounds or so.
They're huge. They're just huge.
I can't. I have no interest in doing that, man.
Well, again, wow. I'm excited to see how this is going to turn out, because this is honestly my bathroom from the studs up. I didn't,
Well, you got your fingerprints on, and
and I'm just excited to see how this is going to look.
And your client picked this, right? You didn't suggest this.
Now, the last time I did a spa, I was going in behind somebody else that totally tanked the job.
Oh.
So, again, all the tiles and stuff were pre-selected for me, and I had to go in and tear out about a third of it and start over.
Mm.
The end result was absolutely gorgeous.
Okay.
Loved it. But this one is absolutely clean. We started at studs. We came in with hardy board. This baby is built and ready. Well, I knew they wanted big tiles.
Mm-hmm.
So I was prepped and ready for big tiles. Then I saw the tiles.
Oh,
and it's like, oh my gosh, you were not kidding. These are actually 4 foot by 2 foot.
Sorry, but I want to fully understand the drama here. So you knew from the get-go when you're putting the studs up that you were using these massive tiles.
Well, I knew they were going to be big tiles, and I was expecting maybe like a 24 by 24.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big tile.
Because what I was thinking is, in a situation like that, because you know how this is, even with studs, when you're putting those in, they could have a little bow to them, or they could have that little imperfection. So you had to get dead on the money studs.
Well, knowing a larger tile was coming, knowing at least I was planning on at max like a 2 by 2.
So you were already planning on getting these walls straight as a
clean, straight, hardy boarded, acrylic clear, sealed, the whole shebang. And man, then they went, well, we made a little change. We want these tiles. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, I will say this. There is a new device, and sometimes it's the dumbest things that cost pennies that make the biggest difference. Mm-hmm. And that is, whenever you're putting in a tile, you make your choice. Do you want a thin grout or a thick grout? And you buy the spacer that goes to it. Well, now a lot of the spacers are designed to be left behind the tile.
Oh, you tuck those down.
They're very thin, and they go up. They go underneath the tile, and you break off the part that sticks out.
Okay.
Now, a new invention to that, since you're going to break that little piece off anyway, they now come ribbed like a cable tie, and there's a little cap you can push down on over those ribs.
Yeah.
That will pull your corner up. If you got a little 4-point corner, that'll pull that corner up to where all 4 of those tiles are level.
Oh, nice.
Without you having to sit there and dinker to get them perfectly level. This, baby, you just push down on that little cap, and it pulls those little four corners up to being level with each other.
Wow, even with something that heavy, holy smokes.
Well, you do it quick. I mean, when you slap the butter and the mud together, you don't have long.
Right.
That stuff's sticking pretty good. And but you slap that little corner on there, and you ease that down there. It pulls those little corners up right nicely, and I'm like, well, that saves a couple of minutes per tile of tinkering to make sure they're level.
I suppose if you did all the prep work, you put a 4 foot by 8 foot, a 4 foot by 2 foot piece of tile. Once it's up, it's up.
You're done.
You just did a 4 foot by 2 foot section. If you had to do that with little, mosaic tiles or something else, you'd be there all day.
Well, it's about this. I actually timed myself on the biggest piece, and it is almost the exact same amount of time to get it right, whether you're using a smaller tile or a bigger tile.
I forgot to ask you, is this like an enclosed shower? Is this like a walk-in shower or something?
All right, I'm building the walk-in shower spa next. This is actually over a tub. So I started with actually the more difficult of the two.
Okay.
Because the walk-in shower is going to be a big tile, but that's a 2x1 tile. And it's going to be a pattern tile. So it'll look like a bamboo rainforest when I get done. And that's a big tile, but I already know those tiles. They're already bought. I've used that size before. I've just never done anything 2 foot by 4 foot before.
Wow. I think I'd want a helper on this. Because when you're setting this in place, you need somebody on the other end.
It is impossible to do this by yourself.
Right.
You really have to have, especially in the cutting department, just to cut one of these bad boys, in half. It's almost a 3-person job.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because I saw, a tile saw, normally they're like the size of like a little bench table saw.
Yep.
And they soak if you don't know what that looks like, folks, it just looks like a mini table saw, and water
No, you can post a picture of it. I sent you a picture of it.
So. I was actually about to ask, since I'm not as familiar with cutting with tiles, I'd imagine like the shrapnel or like the flyback is different than like the dust picked up from wood. And so I was wondering what the protocol is for that.
It's not bad, because the water the water cools the blade off, and it keeps.
Right. But because tile is so dense, even a diamond blade, which I have on my saw, is going to generate a massive amount of heat and spark.
Yeah.
So you use either water or antifreeze. And this particular one, use water. For my stone cutter, actually use antifreeze.
Right.
And it does now. Tile cutting, if you've never done it before, don't wear anything you like. Because you are going to get coated.
Oh, yeah.
And that is if you know what you're doing and you're experienced, you're going to get coated. You're going to get wet. That's just the nature of the beast.
Well,
but I'm excited to see how this turns out. There will be more pictures.
And we'll have to post some pictures of what you worked on now. But better you than me. Hey, hats off, man. That takes a lot of bravery to work with those giant tiles. So, okay, very good, man. That was a pretty exciting weekend review. All right, when we come back, let's see. Let's find out what's going on in the mind of Max.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I'm in danger.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com, and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And now we're getting the sudden backlog. Max, shortly we're going to find out what's going on in your mind. But
probably don't want to know.
We've got texts that are coming in. But also, Allan, I had one more thing before we move on. I circled this a little while ago on my notes, and we haven't got to it. And I want to flesh this out on the air, because I think this is important. We talk about etiquette and treating your fellow man the right way. And you said something a while back off the air about fishing etiquette. You go fishing. I'm not a fisherman, so I don't know these things. But you said you seem to attract the wrong kind of attention when you're trying to fish.
I have
right?
a tendency to attract chatty Cathys. Yeah, I just
We're talking at a lake, right? I mean, there's a difference.
Yes.
You're not on a boat. You're not.
No. Well, on a boat, you're stuck.
Right.
You're kind of trapped with each other. But I'm a bank fisherman. For those of you that like to go fishing, I like to have my little chair and a beverage and chill and be groovy. And catching a fish is kind of the secondary occupation to that. You might not.
Right.
I'm not avid. I'm not a hardcore out there casting 3,000 times trying to get somebody's attention, but
you don't have a $3,000 fly fishing pole.
No,
okay.
I'm not that serious. Now, if I can get you a nice catfish or something, there's lunch.
Yeah.
However, you do have the initial walk around the lake howdy.
Okay.
And this is for your bank people. And this is as you're walking around, kind of figuring out where you want to set up to go fishing.
Yeah.
It is just common courtesy to kind of say howdy to everybody you pass. And then everybody asks the exact same question. How you doing?
Right.
And they don't mean how are you doing? They mean, have you caught anything?
Right. Oh, yeah, sure.
And if you have, of course, now you want to show off.
Right.
That, hey, that the stripers are biting right here, or I got a catfish, or ain't nothing but turtles. Or, it's, and you just kind of give each other a little advice, and then everybody kind of normally settles into their little spot.
And I'm guessing there's probably an accepted distance. Like, when people that don't understand, sometimes they stand too close to you when they're talking. So there's probably an accepted. What is the accepted distance?
It depends on how many people are on the lake.
Okay.
And if you're at somebody's favorite spot.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't go to this lake often, you might have picked somebody's spot that didn't get there till noon. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's casting distance. So you can do your stuff safely and they can do their stuff safely. And as the lake fills up, more and more people fill in. But the general idea is you're casting distance so that you're flinging a hook.
Right.
You don't want to be in somebody else's hook
You don't want to
range.
snag their
Right. You don't want to
basket.
get snagged. Right.
Okay. All right. And then the last thing though is fish, when you're saying these things, are you talking like this so you don't disturb the fish, or you get some blabbermouths out there that are
all right, frighteningly enough, I grew up in the era of shh.
Right.
We're fishing.
Yeah.
They can hear you.
Yeah.
I grew up in that era. However, the best fishing I've ever done and the biggest fish I've ever caught, generally you had a niece or nephew along, squalling, screaming, throwing things in the water, making an absolute nuisance of themselves. And just as they're headed to fall in the lake is usually when the biggest bite of the day comes along. So I'm not so sure you got to be all that quiet.
Okay. All right. Well, but use fishing, because you were telling me about some guy that was just when you say how you're doing, you get a 20-minute explanation of what his life is like. And it's
you get your transients that are like the hardcores that want to cast 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was in his favorite spot. So he kind of moved in kind of between me and the next person so he could kind of more or less get into his favorite spot. But then I had to hear the whole story of why this was his favorite spot, and 20 minutes of, and I'm like, oh, I give up.
All right,
I'm going to go find a new favorite spot.
Okay. I was just curious about that because it's interesting. Because like in Chicago, there's a certain etiquette for shoveling out your favorite parking spot when you're parked in the snow. Like if you shovel out and you stick some like a lawn chair or a traffic cone, that's your spot. If somebody takes it, there's consequences.
There will be ill-fated things.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to flesh that out because I think that's that's important information that we should get out there.
You get your howdy in and then you go find your nice little spot and go enjoy yourself.
Okay. All right. So Max, but let's get caught up on our texts as well. So.
Yeah, since we're getting close to the break, I'd figure we'd address that. But I also thought, Joe, real quickly, that I should mention to you, speaking of aquatic, that I should mention to you the origins of International Beaver Day.
Okay, let's
Since
talk.
they are semi-aquatic creatures.
Sure.
Well, not only does the word beaver come from the word that means brown or bright in Old English, but this is pretty fun. This was created in 2009 by Beaver Wetlands and Wildlife, and it was established back in 2009. And the reason being was They chose this date, which was April 7th, was because it was the birthday of a woman by the name of Dorothy Richards, who was popularly known as the Beaver Woman.
Now, was she like a
like a Jane Goodall?
Jane Goodall was the gorillas in the mist. Yeah, okay.
No, Jane had the chimpanzees.
Oh, I thought she was the gorilla.
Miss Goodall was the chimpanzees.
Okay, go ahead. I'm not going to argue. You would know better than me. So.
I've met her.
Okay.
Well, that was the only major thing that I wanted to mention. I just thought you'd appreciate someone named the Beaver Woman.
Well, I mean, I guess that's because everybody. I mean, they're cool animals. I mean, they're hardworking. They get the things done. If you ever watch them, I mean, that's entertainment alone. If you could just watch them work.
Well, as a part of an animal rehab program, I had one for a while. They are adorable. They're cute. They're fuzzy. They're soft. And the kits, as the young ones are called, are bratty little children.
They're noisy too, right?
They grunt, and like if they want to be picked up, they'll let you know. They'll grunt at you, pick me up, carry me around, adore me. As they get bigger, they're a wild animal. So the difference between a domestic pet is that it basically remains not an adult. So it's more dependent on a human. A wild animal grows up, and just like people, they become independent of you, which is where so many people run into problems having a wild critter for a pet.
Yeah, don't get a raccoon.
Never a good idea.
No,
never a good idea.
Raccoons will cut. Yeah,
well, they're going to grow up and become independent adults.
And beavers are going to chew up your woodwork, and they need to be outdoors. They need to be by water.
They need to be among their world out there. Right. But as a rehab program, we would get one in that had been abandoned or found on the roadside, and we'd raise it up to the right size, and then it got rehabbed back out into the wild.
There you go.
All right, so let's get to some of the text. Pretty flattering. Based on my daily deviation saying treasures beneath our feet, we got Randy sending his pictures of his old Garrett metal detector, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, neat. Yeah, because your daily deviation was all about the burial place of King Richard or something.
King Richard III.
That a woman discovered under a parking lot through her own research.
It was a good movie, too.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool movie.
And then the other one was, we've already done this before, but he was asking, are you all familiar with the Coral Castle, which has to do with Allan one he just said a minute ago.
Oh, the Coral. That's that place in Florida.
Extremely familiar with the Coral Castle. It is a proof of what you can do if you really want to.
Yeah, because this guy was moving stones that were like what? They weighed like as much as a bus or something.
Yeah, well, he moved a lot. He moved a lot of stonework by himself at night. And his real secret, now that we're repairing some of the stuff, some of the things he built are wearing out, and we're discovering that leverage and car parts very, very integral into how to do this.
Yeah. It sounds like somebody got on Facebook and scrolled back through some of our old posts and found the Coral Castle discussion. So, all right, good text coming in. We have a lot to get to in the second hour, but hour one of Tool Talk Radio is in the can, but stay tuned for hour number 2.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we've had kind of a wide-ranging conversation today, with a lot of text, and I was trying to I actually posted some pictures, because if you send us pictures and they're interesting, we'll put it over on our Facebook page. So go to @ToolTalkRadio. I haven't finished all the posts, but I did get a post up there, you guys, from Randy. He was showing us some pictures of his beautiful Brazilian hardwood guitar. It looks like from back in the day, because it sent a picture of him playing it. I'd have to guess this was circa 1970s or something like that.
Looks that way, yeah.
Thanks, Randy. He sent us some pretty good stuff, so we got that up there. But if you want to get in touch with us, there's a lot of topics on the table, including the fact that we hopefully shortly we're going to talk about unconventional home hacks. Nobody's bitten yet on that one, Allan. I was talking about one of my customers that puts they put tennis balls in the dryer with their clothes, and they swear that it makes the clothes fluffier and helps the clothes dry faster. I don't know. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But if you do weird things like that in your home, let us know about it. So
I got hundreds of them.
Yeah. So, but it's we want to find out. We teased this before the break, and we want to circle back and find out what's going on in the mind of Max. So
you don't want to know. It's like a Dr. Seuss story.
Okay.
With less rhyming. But I wanted to follow up on a conversation that Allan brought up the other day, and I can kind of agree with him when he was saying that our structures aren't natural. Yes, we might use elements of nature, but there are no straight lines in nature. There's no like concrete. There's no hardy board or whatever. So it's like I was thinking, how can we make structures that are more organic, so to say? Like I'm reminded of structures like in England or like ancient times or like adobe. So that's kind of my question for the panel.
Now, it seems like you're talking about a couple of things. Are you talking about not only the materials we use, but maybe even designing things with, because you said there's no straight lines in nature. Well, maybe you use more things that are like an arch, or like when you look at it, how a tree grows with angles that split off. Are you talking about things like that, or
that too? But you also expanded on the conversation off the air the other day with regards to how can you build it with things that are organic, they're still hardy, but also biodegradable for the next generation that has to quote unquote clean up your mess.
Well, that's what I was thinking about, Allan. At some point, I don't care, the Burj Khalifa or any of these things they're gonna have to come down at some point. And what do you do with all the scrap? You know, some things aren't necessarily biodegradable, or they might.
You can't put it back in the box like a Lego set.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, you do. It's going to go back in the box whether it fits or not.
Right.
Let's look at all right, let's take a twisted version of this, and let me introduce you to archaeology.
Okay.
You know what archaeology is?
You're essentially just you're looking at the waste of the past in order to
you're digging through somebody's trash dump.
Exactly.
And for archaeologists out there, they all just went, "Hey, that's not exactly what I do." Then they all went, "Yeah, that's pretty close to what I do," because we are looking for the abandoned buildings, the things that are left behind, and the things that are left behind are generally, well, and this even ties into our great moments in building history, are stoneworks, designs, earth features where we actually moved and changed the earth, made a shape of different. Now, Max, to answer you, we are using more and more less volatile things. We've changed how we build a playground these days. We don't use as much arsenic as we used to. We've changed a lot of the chemicals that we use. We don't use anywhere near as many, we're going to say, missteps of the past. And, you know, my most notable misstep of the past was the color green.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Because green, yeah, there was issues about
the
that.
color green generally meant we were using some kind of horrible poison to make it green. Whether it was food, tea, absinthe, or wall covering, we were basically poisoning ourselves. We used to have diseases like the consumption. Well, then that's because we were using bad gas. We were giving ourselves horrible lung diseases. We were also living in very wet conditions, and black molds and other things like that were very common and prevalent. So, and this is where I'll give a shout out to both of our sponsors. You know, Big M Roofing and Remodeling deals a lot with keeping water out of your building, and Groundworks does a whole lot of work about keeping water from coming up into your building.
There you go.
And the fact that we now use drywall instead of many old, harsher things, drywall is basically a chalk, which has been mined and refined, but can also return to being a mineral. You know,
that kind of brings.
I'm not saying we're great at it, but I'm saying we're getting better.
That kind of makes me think of something I'd also thought about too, with regards to like the people who lost all their stuff in like those California wildfires. It's like it makes me think of not only if we simplify what we're using, what is like for the people that lost like their houses, like what is if we're building with complicated materials with all these chemicals and stuff. What's going to happen to that? Like, what are we breathing in if all of a sudden that catches fire? Is that like poisonous? So if we're using like more organic stuff, is it less poison if it suddenly combusts?
I also have something to say about that, Mac. It's not just that it's catching fire. There's things even in like carpet that has got plastics in it that it'll aerate. You'll be breathing it in whether you know it or not as it decomposes. Right.
Well, basically, if you can smell it.
Yeah, you're breathing it in.
You're breathing something in.
Right.
So, yeah, Max, you've hit a huge topic. And if you go through your big box store and you compare it over the years, you're already about 30 or 40 years into what I'm seeing. Joe and I, when we began our careers, I remember asbestos still being part of something. Paint still had lead in it.
Just in our own lifetime, I've seen.
So we've walked away from a lot of the more virulent things.
Well, what I was going to say, Alan, the reason I have some hope is because a lot of people, I mean, look, folks, we do have to think about pollution and we have to think about waste and we have to think about keeping things cleaner. But I don't remember that conversation going on much when I was a little kid. But then as we got older, suddenly people start, we can't just destroy the environment. We have to, think about what we're doing here. So at least we're talking about it.
And a lot of companies are giving thought to, well, what happens to my product after its life?
Yeah.
So, Max, big topic, great question. The answer, happily, is ongoing. So,
what do you think of these structures now where they're calling it big timber, where or
mass timber construction?
Mass timber, where like we're seeing even like I think the highest building so far that they've attempted is about 15 stories, and it's instead of steel and everything else, it's timber. I don't know if that's although steel, I don't think steel presents the same problems as some of these other things, as far as how they break down.
Well, every product you choose has got strengths and weaknesses. If you are choosing rattan and bamboo structures because that's what you have the most of, then you are operating within the limitations of the material available. What happens though, as technology changes and the techniques change, we can build bigger, better, faster. But you also see other people now going, nah, I don't really need bigger, better, faster. What I really need is functionality. All right, the form is fabulous. Now, we had a whole big period start in the Victorians where form was everything. Your house had 87 rooms because each room had a purpose.
Yeah.
So you just migrated around the house all day. Today, we don't do that. The house I'm building for a client right now has a great room and a kitchen in it.
Floor plan.
It's just a big, giant room. And I got to admit, I absolutely love it because the functionality for the modern person is if I'm in the kitchen cooking, I can see the grandkids.
Yeah.
I can see the kids. I can see what's going on all right there in one big open space.
That makes me think of in terms of like maximizing material and like form over that sort of stuff. It makes me think of the idea of like when we're looking at quote unquote the wastes of the past, the structures that we built back then that are still surviving aren't necessarily the tallest. They're just made out of the right materials and with the right level of symmetry, leverage, or whatnot. Like the Pantheon or the Parthenon, they aren't super tall compared to like the megastructures. So maybe we just need to kind of take a cue from the past and downgrade in order to get better quality.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things to think about too. I mean, it's just but also at some point these buildings got to come down, or at least
everything made by man eventually fails.
Right, and so do the future generations a favor and of what think about what you're building that with and everything. So it's a pretty good question, Max, and it's something that I don't know. I'm sure we'll continue to unpack here on the show and everything as well. So I was also thinking is some of these repurposing ideas we had of where maybe what the guts of that skyscraper is made out of can be disassembled and you take the skin off, you take the surface off, you disassemble it, and you repurpose those parts.
We lived in a perfect example, the concourse.
Yeah, there you go. Bingo. So, but maybe that could be built into the design. Maybe these I-beams that you put in are designed to last centuries. And so when that building expires, you take those and then you reuse them in something in the future. I don't know. I think we just have to rethink,
We need to get more Lego.
Yeah.
The
Lego
news,
principle.
Yeah, the happy news is it is ongoing.
Well, speaking of structures that last, boy, here we go. When we come back in our Great Moments in Building History, we're going to talk about the Lake Holmes Dam, which is 1,700 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Pay the price for your lack of vision.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And Max, let's put a pin. We got a text. Somebody's finally weighing in on our unconventional home hacks, I guess, for lack of a better term, we're calling that. But let's address that when we come back. So, dear listener, stay tuned. We're gonna get to your text shortly. But before we get that, let's get to our other item.
And now, great moments in building history.
We're getting back. I mean, for the last few weeks, we've been doing great building materials in history as a subset, and we're gonna, we'll switch back and forth. But it's been a while since we did a structure, so we thought, well, today is we're celebrating a belated International Beaver Appreciation Day, and we thought, well,
that's every day for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're cool animals. I like them. They're just good they get the job done, and they take care of their family. They're hardworking, and they help the environment. Unless you're a farmer that just got your field flooded out, then you don't like those guys. So, but so Allan, there's debate. This one is either there is a dam, and it's called the Lake Holmes Dam, and there's another pronunciation that I can't pronounce.
The Quatana.
The Quatana. So this thing is either 3,300 years old or 1,700, depending on who's keeping score. But the Egyptian ruler Seti, I guess that's how you Seti, may have. I think he basically started the project it's in Syria in 1319 BC. And it looks to me like it took about 15 years to build. But then Emperor Diocletian came along in the year 284 and really ramped it up. This thing's 2 kilometers long. And Max loves Emperor Diocletian, even though he was a rotten creep.
I mean, it's a great name, and I actually found out what his name means.
What?
It comes from the name Dioclea, which was the name of Diocletian's hometown. It's in modern-day Croatia, and the name itself means Zeus's glory.
Okay. Yeah, he did a lot of pretty rotten things, but this is a nice building project he did, Allan. But this thing is functioning. This is not just some artifact. This is a functioning dam that still works today, and there's probably a lot of reasons why it's been so successful. So that's what we're going to unpack today, Ben.
It is. All right. Basically, the idea is that this is kind of a semicircle, so it will remind you of an arch dam. So it is a little bit curved. And the original dam, we'll go back to Seti. The original dam is a core of basalt rock.
Okay.
Which is the most, it's about the most common rock on Earth. And it's a ridge that kind of came around. And it was kind of a natural spot. It was a bottleneck. Now, the thing is, it's a bottleneck that's like 2 kilometers wide. So it's like it's over a mile.
Well, I was curious about that because 2 kilometers, I'm picturing the Mississippi River, folks. If you live outside of Memphis, when you go across the M Bridge or the old bridge, it's almost exactly a mile.
Yeah.
And a mile wide river is pretty big. So I'm like,
the river was not a mile wide. The gap was a mile wide.
Oh, okay. So then it created.
So then we just basically took the natural, and here's a big key here. They took the natural formation and just continued it across into a dam.
So they start on either side. Is that kind
and
of
just
meet in
kind
the
of
middle?
work your way around and meet in the middle.
Like the way they built the St. Louis Arch, like
In a lot of
side.
ways.
Yeah.
Except it's laying flat on the ground. And the biggest thing is this is, of course, a stone heart.
Okay.
So it is built sort of like a natural feature. And the Romans, of course, came along and went, hang on
Hold
a second.
my beer.
Hang on a second, guys. We got some concrete for this.
Right.
And they improved it to the level they wanted.
Because it's about 7 meters tall, which you said is what, a little over 20 feet?
Yeah, I think about 20, 25 feet, somewhere around in there. It was touched up again in about 1938, 1940, so they could hold another 200 million gallons of water in the lake.
Because this is for irrigation for the crops.
Right. This is a flood control and irrigation design for this. So the biggest thing is, they used a really, really durable stone.
Mm-hmm.
Basalt.
Yeah.
Boom. That stuff is, about the end of the conversation for building blocks.
I was just thinking about this with regards to dams. If you use the right material, could you, in theory, have material that purifies the water once it goes out on the other side? Because I know, there's stone that has a purifying element to it.
Oh, now that's interesting. You build a filter system into your design. Now I never thought of that, Matt.
By virtue of the material that you use.
Well, actually, we're going to go back and pick on a beaver dam.
Okay.
By virtue of the fact that a dam stops the flow of water, that allows a settling of the materials in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the Mississippi. She's not known as Big Muddy for no reason.
Oh yeah,
because that is
you don't see through that water.
That is some chocolate milk looking river. But if you look at a beaver stream, a water that has been through a series of beaver dams, it has been now through a series of settling ponds, and that is the exact same format we still use today to clean up municipal water.
That's interesting. It kind of makes me think of pulp settling at the bottom of a drink. So you could say that the quote-unquote pulp of the river or the water settles at the dam. And so that's good because that strengthens the structural integrity. It kind of makes me think of the opposite of what Lake Mead happened to Lake Mead with the Hoover Dam.
I think they shut Lake Mead down because it's such a... Yeah, because the Hoover... That's what I was thinking about, Alan. This dam seems very sensible. It's about 20-something feet high. It's about 1.5 miles wide. Well, the Hoover Dam is, 60 stories tall. It caused a lot of disruption for Lake Mead. And sometimes when you submerge all these plants and all of these landscapes that weren't necessarily meant to be underwater, you create all these chemical reactions. You create all these different byproducts of... so you can't just dam things up and just flood everything without consequences, right?
All right. Well, let's wrap up the Quatana, and then we'll move to what happens afterwards.
Okay.
So here we have the Quatana. It is a basalt center, and then of course we have our favorite product in the entire world: artificial Roman concrete.
The Romans knew their concrete, man.
Man, a little salt water and volcanic ash, and they made a concrete we are just now figuring out how to make again.
Mm-hmm.
So the concrete structure to this is at least, 2,000 years old?
Yeah.
The concrete alone is 2,000. We touched it up in 38 because we wanted it a little bit bigger. I promise the original basalt and Roman concrete will outlive what we touched it up with.
Yeah.
So it is a natural-looking dam. It's in a natural-looking position, and it is a relatively non-disruptive dam. So
it's a reasonable dam.
It is. It is. It's reasonably placed.
It looks natural, too, like you said, because, when I was looking at pictures, it looks a lot like, these levees that I used to see on the Mississippi where you couldn't even tell that it was man-made. It just looked like just a hill or a berm or something.
So, congratulations. This is what happens when all of the right features come together.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are 3,000 years later, the same natural feature was augmented to become a little bit more of a feature. 1,000 years after that, they added to it, made it a little more functional, and it's still holding together today.
But now, so that's a situation of a correctly built dam. And Allan, we're going to talk when we come back about when dams go wrong.
Yes.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
There's something about an underdog that really inspires the unexceptional.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Still don't really know exactly what that means, but anyway, welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in our Great Moments in Building History, we're in the middle of a conversation about one of the world's oldest still functioning dams. It's the Lake Holmes Dam, HOMS. And also, what is it? How do you pronounce
the Quatina?
The Quatina, because it was built by a couple of rulers. It was built by the Egyptian ruler Seti and also the Roman Emperor Diocletian. And if you want, was Diocletian. He's mentioned in the Bible, isn't he, Max?
No. He was
because he was after
years later.
That's right. But
you're thinking of Nero.
That's right. But he was a jerk. But anyway, he knew how to build dams. Hey, this thing's still functioning. But and we're gonna in a minute find out what happens when dams are not built properly or when they cause so much disruption that you have to undo them. But before we do that, let's talk about somebody who does things. He builds things correctly right out of the gate. Oh, did you raise your hand? Let's see. Okay. All right, now listen up, folks. What is this one, Max? This isn't bad.
This is called Brutal Carnage.
I've seen some of the roofs he's worked on. That one might be appropriate.
Let this play a little longer, because folks, if you're wondering what all this cacophony is, all right, maybe turn it down a little, Max. So Jay Hill is not satisfied with the walk-up music that Max has been providing him over these last years, and we're on the hunt for new walk-up music for Jay Hill, and we need his approval. So
maybe Brutal Carnage is the winner.
I like that one. We'll see. So Jay, we'll see what you think of that. But okay, the next time he comes in, we'll get his vote. So okay, but speaking of people that do things correctly right out of the gate, Jay is one of the top-rated roofers in this entire region. And with good reason. He's a GAF Master Elite installer, and he brings expertise. And what else? The other thing I like about Jay is that the enthusiasm and the energy he brings to every project, and just the optimistic nature of Jay Hill. But Jay is all about the exterior protection of your home, from roofing to gutters to siding to windows, and all interior remodeling except kitchens and bathrooms. Allan, he's not getting near that 4-foot tile that you were dealing with this week.
Nope.
He knows what he wants to work on, and it's not that. And I don't really blame him, because he focuses on what he's good at and what he can do efficiently. And there's a reason for that too, because Jay, man, I have to imagine his phone is ringing off the hook after these storms that we just had. Well, if you think that you might have had damage to your home, especially after these recent storms, the other thing that sets Jay Hill apart is the fact that he's a former insurance agent, which is hugely helpful. It helped Allan and I, because if you have damage to your home, and especially your roof, that's covered by your homeowner's insurance, it's not a straightforward process. As a matter of fact, you really need an advocate on your side. So if you suspect that you might have any damage that is covered by your homeowner's insurance, Jay should be the first person you call. He's going to come over. He's going to give you a free consultation, which don't overlook that. That is a great value to you. He's going to show you if you have a path forward and describe the issues that you have. And if you do, boy, is that an exciting prospect, because now it's going to save you thousands of dollars. But also, Jay has great financing. He has 30 lenders at his disposal. And all of the work that he does is just top notch. And these roofing systems that they install are so well engineered that they offer lifetime transferable warranties. So we love Jay Hill. We love Big M Roofing and Remodeling, and we encourage you to contact him directly. You can reach Jay at 901-484-5645 or go to bigmroofingandremodeling.com. All right, well, Allan, before the break, we were singing the praises of the Lake Holmes Dam, which it seems like a very reasonable structure. It's about 1.5 miles wide. It's been used for millennia now, and it's still functioning, and it's not going anywhere. It's been well constructed, and it seems to be benefiting the area. But that's not always the case, right, when you build a dam. So.
Well, let's back up to the Industrial Revolution in the U.S. and let's get to about 1880, 1890.
Okay,
we've kind of figured out electricity by then. We're figuring out railroads and mass transportation. So what we're really looking for now is power and location.
Okay.
So a whole lot of small creeks, rivers, pond systems got dammed up. And
you mean incidentally dammed? Or did they do that on purpose?
No, this means, Joe, you're looking for a place to put in that wood shop, and you need power, and a water wheel could provide all the power you need.
There we go.
So we're going to dam up this little creek right here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, now let's fast forward to, I don't know, how about 2025? And your buggy whip company went out of business in 1938.
Yeah.
Or you moved your company to, I don't know, how about plug-in electricity?
Yeah.
So we have got, between the U.S. and Europe, it's not an exaggeration to say we have thousands of out-of-date dams.
Okay, and these were built for they were built for the purposes of providing power and maybe a little extra water.
Right, the flood control, all kinds of stuff. The problem is now what do you do with it?
Sounds like your favorite word, unintended consequences. So.
Well, here we are, 150 years later, and Max, I get to look at you and your question about filtering that water. Well, all of these little dams are now silting up, which means all of the stuff that was in the creek, in the water, has now settled.
Okay.
And the bottom of the lake may have risen nearly to the top of the dam at this point.
Oh, because it's accumulating sediment
all the soil
and all the soils.
Sediments and stuff like that.
Okay.
And sooner or later, what was the song? The levee gonna break.
Yeah.
And you do not want all that mud and water in an uncontrolled manner coming downhill.
So you don't get a bunch of dynamite and blow this thing up and then boom.
All right, so what
you probably got to clean it up first before you get the dam done, right?
So, well, now we have, and Max, again, this is where we have such great hope, is that a number of companies have taken it upon themselves to provide dam removal services. So in a controlled manner, because, one of these dams might be upstream from your town.
Yeah, and you can't just get rid of it. And you're
you certainly don't want it to fall over.
Yeah.
Because you don't need an extra 200 million gallons of mud and water suddenly showing up in the middle of your town square. So there are a lot of companies out there that are now in the dam removal business.
I could just think of the names.
Yeah.
And you have an even a growing number of Native American projects where they are rewilding or returning these things to their natural state. And one of the big side effects, especially on the western United States side and some on the Atlantic, is the return of migratory fish like salmon.
Because it disrupted their ability to go upstream, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, as much as we might have tried to work around it, it's still not the same as the natural stream.
Right.
And this is where, again, our dear friends, the beavers, come back into play, because as we're rewilding the areas, we're returning the critters.
Yeah.
The moose and the lynx and the wolves and the, all of the stuff. But beavers were an integral part of this because their dams are much lower and provide water filtration. And if the beaver dam fails, it's not going to take out your city.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
And you're using materials that are already in nature to begin with. But what I was thinking is yes, we're undamming, so to say, but eventually, is this going to repeat like a cycle where we might need to redam it generations from now?
That's what I'm wondering, Alan. Maybe instead of like just getting rid of the dam, you have to maybe cut it in half or something like that. I just feel like, man, there's all these different
options
layers
are on the table,
right?
But they're being weighed by people going, all right, which do I prefer?
Yeah.
Do I still need this? If the answer is no, then how do we get rid of it in a controlled and safe manner? And if the answer is, well, we need it, but how do we upgrade it? How do we make it safer? How do we make it more productive? So a lot of questions are being asked, and the good news is we're coming up with good answers. So if we need to repurpose it, it's being repurposed. If it just needs to go, the good news is we're letting it go. So, this is one of those happy, great moments in building history where we built it with a purpose. We did what we wanted to do with it. And now we are safely removing it so that we can repurpose that land to its next highest and best use.
To me, though, this seems like this would have to be done in stages. You don't just get in there and tear all the dams out. Like, in other words, you might even have to take half the dam away and then let the landscape acclimate for 4 or 5 years, and then take another one, and then maybe go downstream. And it sounds like dismantling. It sounds pretty complicated.
You can go online and look up the Klamath River Dam Removal Project.
Okay,
and they have been doing that for several years, exactly the way you just said.
Okay, perfect. But it's going in the right direction. If nothing else, let's be optimistic, folks. We'll have a few more parting thoughts about that, and then we're going to circle back and talk about our unconventional home hacks.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And now for the finishing touch.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass.
It is our final segment.
It is.
That finishing touch.
That was a good rejoinder there, Max. Well, we better do things in the proper order because now suddenly I love how people text right at the end of the show, Matt. So we'll get to those. So let's do this in the correct order. At the top of the show, I put forth the proposition that one of my customers, I was super intrigued. I found out that I was wondering why they have a basket of tennis balls in their laundry room, and they put the tennis balls as a matter of course into their dryer with them. They claim that it bounces the clothes around. I guess it helps them dry. It makes them fluffier or something. And one of our texters reacted to that, right, Max? So
it was a tip for tat. They said these ribbed ones work better than tennis balls because they grip the clothes to help the tumbling. It looks like one of these things that you use, like you give for a dog toy. It looks like a little virus.
They look like
little spiky ball.
Those little rubber balls. They're kind of the more rigid rubber with the so if a dog bites into it, like when you play fetch or something, and so
exactly.
I guess so that's who was that? Randy again?
Randy's a loyal texter today.
Randy's been on top of it, and he sends pictures. Randy's like a textbook.
He's
texter.
working it today.
He sends pictures, a clear explanation, and makes an interesting point.
He still has in top Deuce in terms of pictures and descriptions.
Yeah, and we'll never post anything Deuce sends us picture-wise. But thank you, Randy. That's a good one. But so what we were in the market for is some unconventional home hacks. I'm going to throw one out there. I've mentioned this in past episodes, Allan, but this isn't an unconventional home hack. This is a hack I use. Nobody in shop. I'll tell you this. When I studied classical furniture design, my teacher never taught me this. He might even be horrified that I do it. But this is a wood shop hack that I do. And if you've ever stained wood, folks, especially if you're staining like a harder wood like oak or something, and maybe you put that first coat of stain on and it's just not covering as much as you'd like, or maybe it's splotchy, or maybe it's you want to get a deeper, richer color. Well, the hack I use, and I'm not telling you to do this, but give it a shot, is you take a wet rag, and before you put the polyurethane on, and if you rub that wet rag across the surface, what you're going to do, you may not even feel any difference, but what you've done is you've activated those fibers and you've lifted the fibers, let it dry a little bit, and then put a coat of stain on, and you'll be amazed how deep the stain is that goes on. Because now, I don't know what I did. I guess you've opened the fibers, Allan, or something?
You've activated the pores. It's just like a pre-stain. You're just using water as a pre-stain.
Yeah, but don't just immediately. You got to let it dry, too. You have to. All you're doing is lifting the fibers. I picture little microscopic, like little trap doors that you just opened, and now it's going to allow the stain to
actually
penetrate.
Pretty close to the truth, exactly what you did.
So that's my hack, but okay, and we'll leave it out there. I mean, if you've got home hacks, you can throw us in. You can throw these on for next week.
I'll give you two real fast.
Okay, because we have another texter to address. But
gotta give you two real fast. Anybody got an old piece of like 3-inch PVC lying around about a foot or two in length, and or any packing square like your furniture comes with, they're filling spaces, and it's like that cardboard square that's hollow. That makes the world's greatest plastic bag dispenser.
I never thought of that.
You got millions of those plastic bags. Right. You get them all the time. They are reusable for quickie jobs or tying stuff up to go in the trash.
I never throw those out. I reuse them.
Just stuff them in the top of it and pull them out the bottom.
That's a good idea because it takes up no space. Dispenser. You can tuck it in the corner of a closet. Okay, I'm going to steal that one. That's a good one. So, what did you have another one you said?
Another one involves your smaller pieces of PVC pipe. You can make basically of bathroom tool holsters or tool holsters out in your workshop. So of course, you and I don't use a curling iron, but Max might. If you got a curling iron or hair blower or something like that, you can actually take you a little piece of board, put you some PVC tubing the right size to drop it down in, and now you suddenly have an out-of-the-way storage holster for your stuff to keep it nice and neat instead of throwing it under the sink.
That's a good, man. These are good hacks, folks. I got to give them credit.
I got millions of these.
There we go.
Bring them on.
Okay, so what do we got on the text line, Max?
By the way, Deuce texted, he said, I heard that.
Well, Deuce, I'm sorry. Your track record does not... It doesn't give us a lot of confidence.
I have faith in you, Deuce. I have faith in you, man.
Maybe he can redeem himself. So, all right, go ahead.
All right, so Agent 732 finally, after a month, said in honor of International Belated Beaver Day, there is a chemical called castoreum that is produced by a beaver gland that is used in perfumes as a vanilla scent. People said that it was used as an artificial vanilla flavoring, but the beavers don't secrete enough to make it an efficient option.
Okay, wait. Do we have to do the lethal option to extract this stuff, Allan?
Nope.
Okay, good. Because I like beavers. I don't want to hunt them down.
He will express this very happily for you, and the gland is located in the rear end of the beaver.
Like a skunk?
Like a skunk.
Is this how they mark their turf?
It is. It is indeed. And it is a very oily goo called castoreum, and it is indeed used in some perfumes and stuff because it's a lingering scent.
Kind of like ambergris.
And very similar. Now, to dispel the rumor, this chemical is way too rare and expensive to be a vanilla flavoring.
Yeah,
so quit believing the internet when it says your artificial vanilla comes from a beaver. It doesn't.
Right.
Your artificial vanilla comes from a chemical designed to emulate the vanilla orchid, and the chemical is called vanilla-in. Vanillin. So, however, true vanilla that we eat comes from the vanilla orchid.
You're really making me wonder about something. So okay, I'll give this to Agent 732. He has all this random knowledge that I guess on trivia night he's useful, but I don't know what other purpose it serves. But at the same time, you're saying that perfume is made out of this stuff.
Well, perfumes originally, your true French parfums, if you go back and look at the ingredient list, you will absolutely gag because it's... The secret is the base that is an oily, long, lingering scent. And ambergris, which is actually part of whale poo, has a distinct, long, lingering scent. stuff like castoreum is designed to be a long, lingering scent because, hey, I marked my territory and I'm telling all you other guys this pond is already mine.
I guess I'm just fascinated with things that involve the sense of smell or activate our sense of smell, because we know that it's one of the most powerful senses, and yet we don't often, I think, give it the attention it deserves. Like, for example, you've experienced this, I'm sure. You smell something that you haven't smelled since, like, it's that homemade bread that your mom used to bake when you were 8 years old, and all of a sudden it brings back all these memories or something, and yet. And I think smell, I don't know. I'm intrigued by this.
I'm reminded too of, like, in terms of smells, like popcorn that I had. Like, I could tell that this particular popcorn was super salty or had like a particular butter to it. So it's like you remember the good and the bad too.
Oh yeah, there's certain things, if you ever got sick off of eating something, you'll remember that smell forever, and you don't want to.
Well, this is why aromatherapy is actually such a powerful memory stimulant.
Sure.
Smell is one of the strongest memory stimulators out there, which is why, depending upon your ethnicity, what that kitchen smelled like, whether it was rosemary or cabbage or any strong smelling food, baking bread, baking cookies, very strong, very active, and can really snap some memories in there.
All right. Well, I feel like we've just activated a new topic for next week. So the sense of smell and how we incorporate that into home improvement.
Fresh cut wood, man.
All right. Well, there you go. There's a tease for next week. But we got to get out of here, you guys. The show is over. You've been listening to another wide-ranging episode of Tool Talk Radio. On behalf of my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.